Good evening, everyone. It is an immense pleasure in welcoming you all to the day 4 of Samsiddhi 2020, a national level Ayurvedic web conference series conducted by Ayurveda College Coimbatore and powered by Diksha e-learning. In today's session, we will be discussing about novel concepts of Ahara by Dr. Anupama Krishnan and followed by another session about important medicinal plants of Nallamalai Hills, Eastern Ghats of Andhra by Dr. Ajayan Sadanandan.
Ladies and gentlemen, before starting this adorable section, I would like to go through few of the basic instructions to be followed throughout the session. For uninterrupted class session, use laptop with high-speed internet connection. Please make sure your microphone is on mute to have a disturbance-free session. In case of any disruption, please check your internet connection first, and if the problem is within our network connection, kindly raise the issue in the chat box. Filling your full name to be displayed is appreciated. Any questions can be raised in the link provided in the chat box. Questions raised in the link will be cleared at the end of the session.
Now, without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Sri Kumar, Associate Professor, Department of Swasthavrata, Ayurveda College, Coimbatore, to deliver the welcome address. Sir, please.
Good afternoon, all. I, Dr. Srikumar, see on behalf of management, faculty, and students of Ayurveda. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Extend my very warm welcome to our chief guest speaker, Dr. Anupama Krishnan, and our beloved principal, Dr. Sudhir sir, delegates and students of Ayurveda College to this fifth session of Samsiddhi 2020. It is our great honor to have Dr. Anupama Krishnan as the guest speaker today. Dr. Anupama Krishnan is Associate Professor, Department of Swasthavrata, Vaidyaratnam P.S. Warrior, Ayurveda College, Kottakkal, Kerala. It is our immense pleasure to welcome you, ma'am. I once again welcome you all to the fifth session of Samsiddhi 2020. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm happy to introduce today's guest speaker, Dr. Anupama Krishnan. She completed her BAMS and her MD in Swasthavrata from Government Ayurveda College, Thiruvananthapuram in the year 2002 and 2007 respectively. She did her PhD from Kerala University of Health Sciences. She has more than 13 years of experience in the field of Ayurveda. She is currently working as an associate professor, Department of Swasthavrata, VPSV Ayurveda College, Kottakkal. On a final note, she is also a very fascinating person and we are grateful for her presence among us today. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Anupama Krishnan. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Can I start, Dia? Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
What I will do is I will switch off the video for now because sometimes it gets interrupted. So thank you for the lovely introduction. I'm extremely privileged and extremely feel humble for the invitation. Hope we can make a beautiful journey. Thank you. So friends, today we are talking on Ahara. We are talking on some concepts of Ahara. We are going to navigate together into some concepts of Ahara. So first I will start off with familiar concepts. One second. So I extend my warm greetings from Kottakkal Ayurveda College. And here we go. So Ahara, as we know, is the root of life. What is Ahara? And it to be very simple, it is an item or any item which is taken by mouth, followed by digestion, which would yield tissue elements, and it is aimed at proper growth and it performs its function. What function? The function of growth, promotion, and protection. So it is mandatory for survival. Now, Ahara has been conferred paramount importance because for the simple reason that it sustains life. Life depends on good health, and good health undeniably is depend on ahara. Now, a judicious application of ahara would yield complexion, clarity, good voice, longevity, genuineness, happiness, satisfaction, nourishment, strength, and intellect. So as we can see, it will cover a wide domain for our survival, optimum health, growth, and development. It is not mere growth, mere survival, but we need it for the mere survival plus growth for development. For the optimum functioning of an organism, we need ahara. Now, the food functions, as summarized in Hygiene and Public Health, are the materials which are required for growth. They will compensate the tissues which are undergoing wear and tear. They are acting as a fuels for functioning. These are the ones which will regulate and maintain body function. Now, there is a very interesting quote. Tvam odanam prashihi, tvam odana idi. It is a hint towards conducive food. That is, a conducive, wholesome food will befit health, whereas a non-conducive, a non-wholesome food will ultimately befit disease. Now, we are further talking about the inclination of food on purity of mind. There is can you see the slides properly?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I can see some disruption. That's what I think it's okay.
Yes,
Now here comes the domain of qualitative attributes of food, which we are very, very familiar with. But as you will see later in the session, these concepts are very new to the Western world, because we have been indulging in these concepts right from the day we started BAMS. They may appear to be quite known or old to us, but these are the groundbreaking concepts which the Western world is now trying to explore. Now, the Sattva, Rajas and Tamasika property of food has been actually borrowed from Bhagavad Gita. It gives us an idea about the qualitative attributes which will actually have an influence on the mind and the body of the person, and they are the bidirectional. That is, they can influence the body and mind, and the body and mind can also influence these food items. Now, they are preferred by people with similar dispositions and temperaments. Now, there are food items which will support the properties in accordance with the inherent qualities. One second, I will just, okay. Now, what are sattvic foods? Now, as we can see, these are the fresh foods, the stable ones, the pleasant ones, freshly prepared foods, fresh fruits and vegetables and milk, which will obviously provide or will result in excellence of health, physical and mental abilities and pleasure. However, talking about the Rajasiga food, which are obviously or evidently predominant in bitter, sour, salt, hot, spicy, and dry in nature, they will generate burning sensation and will eventually develop sorrow, grief, and disease. Now, most of the junk food varieties, preserved foods that we consume and which we see, which is highly prevalent across in the current era, belongs to the Rajasiga food. Further, we come to the Tamasika food. Now, this is the most disgusting form of food because it is stale, tasteless, refuse, leftover, and putrid, and this will certainly culminate in disease and ill health. Now, there is something very convincing about this temperament of food. When we talk about food temperaments, it is a sequence when the Ishtam, Priyam, and Hitam regarding the food comes in an alignment. We have got a natural disposition or a natural liking for sattvic food. And then we will have a natural disinclination for Rajasic and Tamasic food, which would certainly develop discomfort, disease, disability, degeneration, and even death. So it is actually a temperament, and a temperament can always be modulated. Now, Ayurveda has always believed in the integrity of emotional status. Why? Because an integral emotional status very decisive for motivating the food intake. It plays a cardinal role in enjoyment, digestion, and assimilation of food. So it is just not the nutrient value or the caloric value. And this exactly explains why Charaka has asked to refrain from food when we are in an anxious or an angry mode or a sad or a depressed mood, because the idea of food is to beget nourishment, and it does not work out when you are depressed. Now, further studies have shown that the percolating bond between emotion and diet is nothing but a natural response or heightened natural response, which involves psychological and physiological mechanisms. These are studies which have been working meticulously on finding out the relationship between emotion and diet, and we take this for granted. Now, this quote is especially important in this scenario because this COVID-19 season or this epidemic and pandemic situation has led to a massive anxiety and depression among people across the globe. And obviously, dietary habits are affected because conditions of stress, distress, and emotional disturbance are associated with unhealthy diet patterns and poor quality of diet. So it would be worth considering the mental status, the emotional status of the patients who approach us in this particular period of agony and pain, because there is always a possibility of unhealthy dietary pattern and poor quality of diet owing to the fear and anxiety component. Now here we were talking about achetana ahara, which is actually contributing and being converted into a chetana with the sharira. Now here we come to the point of discussion that of course ahara is the most important, but unfortunately ahara is the most severely abused item because it comes in the Annamaya Kosha. It is subjected to a vigorous manipulation. Although it is commenced or it is honored as Mahabhaishajya, it is subsequently subjected to restrictions, relaxations, celebrations, control, contempt, disgust, and whatnot. Now, the placement of ahara in the Trayopastamba in the first position itself is very decisive, and it accounts to be a modifiable health behavior, which is actually a positive component. Now, I would like to bring to your notice, friends, that in the scientific platform, nutritional research actually started only in 1785. And the Japanese were the first to observe that the food could have a role behind gastronomic pleasure and energy and nutrient supply to the human organism. And they are the pioneers. So that was quite a jerk for many of us, because this is a phenomenon which is actually followed by the Asian countries. We consider food and gut a little more than what the Europeans or the Westerners would consider. And I would also like to bring to your notice that Japan is a country which has got the maximum number of its functional food items on the market. They are very phenomenally, meticulously involved in promoting their functional food items. Now, we are also having a very fine blend. We also have got a very grounded nutritional strategy. We can first go to the example of the Nitya Sevaniya. Our Nitya Sevaniya is a fine blend of food items which can be equated to the balanced diet. Now, what is a balanced diet? A balanced diet is a food with nutrients in such quantities and proportions so that the need for calories, proteins, minerals, vitamins, and other nutrients is adequately met with a small provision for extra nutrients to stand the short duration of leanness. Now, we can see that our blend, a properly blended Nitya Sevaniya, can actually provide, which is actually meant on a daily basis, would be taking care of this anticipated nutritional deficiency and can ward off a subsequent proneness to infection, because there is a generous supply of carbohydrates, fat, protein, and micronutrient, which will take care of the immune status and will also try to ward off the susceptibility to infection. Now, I take the example of Amalaki's inclusion. I'm taking only one because our time may not permit us to discuss everything, but we'll take the most undeniable, the undisputed status of Amalaki. It has served several indices of immune response, antibody production, lymphatic proliferation, and number of involvement in pulmonary function and iron absorption. Now, that is not all, because the epidemiological studies also support the hypothesis that vitamin C has got a great role in prevention of coronary heart disease, cancer, cataract, and it is actually advocated on a regular basis as well. So we can find that our Nitya Sevaniya was a very practically implemented, thoughtful way of giving us antioxidants, of giving us a rejuvenation, of giving us a cost-effective food item, a food item combination which would serve all the components of the balanced meal. And then another dimension of Nitya Sevaniya, friends, would be its alkaline nature. We all know that we need a slightly alkaline range for survival. And it should also be noted that the Western meal has actually a continuous exposure to modernization processed food has actually reversed the ratio of potassium and sodium from 10:1 to 1:3. And we have reduced potassium, and we have increased sodium. We have reduced bicarbonate and increased the chloride content. Sorry. Now this has resulted in acidification of the biofluids, which has got undesirable health consequences. Now the fruits and vegetables mentioned in our Nitya Sevaniya Gana, you can see is that it is very conducive to health. It is doing the nourishment to the dhatus. It is keeping off or taking care of the chronic diseases. Also, it is coupled with the activity of encountering free radicals. Mind you, friends, something which is given on a daily basis has to be a population strategy, has to be cost effective, has to be culturally adaptive, culturally acceptable. It should have least complications. It should be providing rejuvenation. And if you see the list of Nitya Sevaniya Ahara, we can see it is a blend of all this. It's a beautifully compact provision, and it is also geographically acclaimed. Now we also have got meticulous answers, well-defined, concrete answers to when to eat, how much to eat, how should one eat, etc. Now we can roughly say it is 2 times, and we are very adamant in telling that the food should be taken only after the digestion of the previous meal, and of course only when you feel hungry. It should not be taken before 3 hours and not more than 6 hours. Gap should be there. And once when a person has got clear belchings, when he's properly and sincerely interested in taking food, when he feels hunger, a person is supposed to take his food. Here, the quantity and how much the food taken is actually decided by the Agni Bala. And of course, the nature of the food, the energy requirement, the physical and the mental status of the person, whatever be it, a food that taken should not be causing heaviness, but it should be giving relief from hunger. That is the demarcation line. Now we also have got a very judicious, a well-planned strategy of specific guidelines or diet. We could say is Ayurvedic dietary principles or protocols for different purposes. Now here we find that our Ahara concept is certainly a multi-level, a very intrinsic, individual, environmental, somatic, psychological, spiritual beads. So we have got a chain having the beads of individual consideration, environmental consideration, somatic consideration, psychological and spiritual inputs into it. Such a broad umbrella of food is very unique to Ayurveda. So now I invite you to travel a little bit. We can travel into different waters, navigate into little different waters of certain concepts which are not actually very new, but it is nice to know because they will help us in exploring our science through a widened vision. We can have a better horizon or maybe a newer horizon. Now, going to gut health. What is gut health? Most of you must be knowing about it, but I'll just repeat once more. It covers the positive aspects of the GI tract. So what does that mean? Yeah, it means effective digestion and absorption of food. It also means that your absence of GI illness and a stable intestinal microbiota. It also confers a good immune status and a well-established sense of well-being. Now, before we enter into gut microbiota and gut health, we'll first see about the gut. This understanding of the gut has been groundbreaking and revolutionary, because this was not what it was thought to be. It was considered as just an organ which was necessary for digestion. Our thought of gut was alien to the Occidental world. Now, gut is now considered the biggest digestive organ, the immune organ, endocrine organ. It has got an relatively independent nervous system, and this has got similarities with the brain neuronal components. It is basically functionally independent, and it is a microbial organ with 90 to 95% of its total cell number, which is comprised of microorganisms. Now, it's a biggest immune organ as well, with the internal surface area accounting to 200 square meters. It forms a barrier separating the intestinal tissue from outside, and it contributes, that is, the gut mucosal immunity is the most important part of the innate immune system. And the immune cells in the GALT, that is gut associated lymphatic tissue, is the most stable immunologically active cell. Now, we are going to see what human being is considered as. Now, human beings are considered as superorganisms who are actually harboring billions of microorganisms such as bacteria, fungi, virus, and protozoa living in and around our body. We are totally covered by microorganisms. The gut microorganism, which is known as the gut microbiota, is also known as the commensal microbiota. It accounts for almost 1 kilogram and is the most important microorganism prevailing in the body. There are more than 300 to 3,000 species, more than 114 types, and they are 10 times more than the total human cells, and the genes are 200 times more than the human gene. So actually, we are more microorganisms. The collective bacterial genome is greater than the human genome, and the most prestigious scientific journal Nature has been calling the human being as we rather than I, because 90% of the total cells and genes are that of the microorganism. So we are basically a super organism. Now, what do they do inside, and what do we have? Do we have an enmity between them? No, we don't. The gut will provide a living space, a food for microorganism, and the microbiota in turn will be showering us with development and function of the gut. Together, it's a symbiotic relationship. The gut and the gut microbiota will work together for solving the task of digestion, immune endocrine function, neurotransmission. Now, the gut brain, as it is, will take care of the local function. Apart from that, it will regulate the human behavior, cognition, that too similar to the brain. So actually, it is also helped, it has got its own functional status. It is like two main departments working in the body. So this is a symbolic representation of how the gut microbiota will influence various parts. Now, what do? They will help in the metabolic digestion and absorption of the nutrient. It will help in the digestion of the resistant carbohydrates, the decomposition of the exogenous endogenous proteins. They aid in the degradation of the bile, synthesis of vitamins. It is absolutely important for the maturation of the immune system and the neuroendocrine system. Now, the respiratory system is functioning, it's very closely related to the microbiota, and any form of abnormalcy in the microbiota has shown. These are all scientific papers, because I've given the references below for the purpose of further references. The skin and respiratory system has shown profound issues in the case of disruption of the microbiota. You can see that the entire gut health can cause health and disease of the system and the being as it is. We'll be discussing about how important Agni is in this concept. Now, this was a concept which was very naive, but for us it is digestible because we know the importance of Agni. We know the importance of gut. Now, gut microbiota has also the role in mind behavior, which is actually, this part was the last to be discovered because it was always ignored. Cognitive function, learning capacity, memory, mood, emotions are also linked with, are closely impacted by gut microbiota, and this has been showed. There are many studies which have proved this in the case of autistic children. Now, gut microbiota forms a very important part of the stress response system. The psychological stress, what they do, they will not only activate the neuroendocrine and immune nervous system, they will destroy the gut health also. On the contrary, a healthy microbiota will help the host to cope up with stress. That is exactly why we see why we are trying to deal stress with food. Because you will see a little later that the gut microbiota is most influenced by the diet. So if you want to make a change in the outcome, the best way is to modulate the diet. Now, influential factors. Diet shapes the gut microbiota. It's a blanket statement though, because different food will prompt proliferation of different microorganisms. Even short-term dietary changes will alter the human microbiota. Now, that is a very important take-home message, because we believe that a food item for a short duration may not be much important, but it is important. Now, circadian rhythms are also very important, because circadian rhythms are the fundamental properties of mammals, and the microbiota is regulated by the host circadian clock. Now, why are we talking about gut health now? Because the entire clinical industry, I would call it the clinical industry, the medical industry is working on gut health, because the prevalence of IBS, obesity, metabolic syndrome, non-alcoholic fatty liver, and behavioral disorders have propped in heap dimensions. There has been an exponential increase, and they find that these people are having very poor or inferior gut health. So that is why there is a lot of research being pumped into gut health session. Now, this trend is not new to us. I said before also, like we were discussing a little earlier, that this is very, very genuinely in the Asiatic cultures. The Chinese medicine, the Japanese medicine, the Indian indigenous medicine have always taught the gut has to be a very important organ. And now there is a awareness that gut is a valuable tool to maintain health. Now here in Japanese, they consider it as a center for spiritual and physical health. Now, this is the major criteria for a healthy GI system. Just have a look on this. We just go through this. Effective digestion and absorption of food, absence of GI illness, normal and stable intestinal microbiota, effective immune status, and status of well-being. I think we can find a balance between, we can try to relate this to the Arogya Lakshana mentioned in Kashyapa Samhita. The first line itself tells us a proper motivation for food intake. And the food taken should be properly digested and assimilated, and the proper elimination. The single definition of Arogya Lakshana actually fits into the gut health. So there starts our journey of importance to gut health. And these are the various methods, objective parameters, which have been meticulously tried out for assessing the gut health. They range from validated questionnaires for the quality of life and gut health, GI symptom scores, markers of functionality, markers of intestinal integrity, markers of intact immunity. But friends, now there is something else coming up. Now they say these objective parameters are very good, fine, but that is not enough. The perception of the individual is far more important or equally important as the objective assessment. And this can be obtained only by direct conversation